Folks, I saw this clip and I had to do a video on it. Jeffrey Lord got on CNN this morning and made, in my opinion, a very stupid comparison between Martin Luther King and Donald Trump. My question is, are people who are racially blind, deaf, and dumb, are they racist or just plain stupid and unrealistic? In my opinion, Jeffrey Lord is at least stupid and unrealistic. Now, I don't know if he is racist or not. I know he's a Trump supporter, and that carries with it its own baggage, but for Mr. Lord to attempt to make the arguments that he did in defending his comment regarding the comparison between Martin Luther King and Donald Trump, in my opinion, is idiotic at best and basically condescending at its worst. I'm going to play you the clip from the CNN show, and then I guess you can judge for yourself. Here we go.
Our very own Jeffrey Lord making a statement today that raised not some eyebrows, a lot of eyebrows. Let's discuss it now. Bakari Sellers, Selena Zito, Simone Sanders, and Jeffrey Lord here. Jeffrey, have anything you want to say before we get started?
No, I mean, I think the coverage of me by CNN today has been very fair. I mean, I have no quarrels with it. I've had every opportunity to speak up and present my point of view. We disagree. I mean, all right. You know, beyond that.
All right, let's play it then. Here's what you said earlier this morning on CNN about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and about President Trump, a comparison. Here it is.
I want to say something here that I know will probably drive Simone crazy, but think of President Trump as the Martin Luther King of healthcare.
Oh, Jeffrey.
When I was a kid, President Kennedy did not want to introduce the Civil Rights Bill because he said it wasn't popular, he didn't have the votes for it, etc. Dr. King kept putting people in the streets in harm's way to put the pressure on so that the bill would be introduced. That's what finally
you do understand that Dr. King was marching for civil rights because people that look like me were being beaten. Dogs were being sicked on them. Basic human rights were being withheld from these people merely because of the color of their skin. So let's not equate Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., a humanitarian, a Nobel Peace Prize winner, to the vagina-grabbing President Donald Trump.
Now, I stopped it there because his initial statement was he was going to say something that was going to drive Simone crazy. If what he said basically was true and really wasn't tainted in any way, why would he think his statement would drive her crazy? I mean, truth is truth, but he knew what he was saying was going to be inflammatory, and he basically had no justification for it.
Wow.
Never forget.
Okay, listen, that was morning TV. So Simone, you know, hey, I gotta commend you. You understand, Jeffrey, that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. is a civil rights hero. Did you realize what you were saying there?
Sure, because Dr. King is a hero of mine and has been since I was a kid. Don, look, I use Dr. King. Let me go to other races. Let's go with Gandhi, Dr. King's hero. Let's go to Senator Eugene McCarthy or Tom Hayden on the Vietnam War, who used the same tactic, at least Tom Hayden did, of shutting down things to draw attention to the Vietnam War. It is a tactic. It is a colorless strategy that was used very effectively by Dr. King for civil rights, by Gandhi to get independence from India, by Vietnam protesters, of which I was once one for a bit, in the 1960s and 70s to end the Vietnam War.
Jeffrey,
it is a colorless
Jeffrey, that's a reach. I mean, and you do remember.
No, it is not a reach.
You do remember 2 days ago what happened with Sean Spicer with a very ill thought out comparison as well. Some things you just some comparisons you just don't make.
Exactly. Dr. King wanted to shut things down to draw attention to the lack of civil rights. He was right to do so. I believed it then. I believe it passionately now.
I think you're very ill-informed.
So Don, I've talked a lot about on CNN about the importance of protest, and protest is designed to make people uncomfortable. So the way Jeffrey talks about the tactics, quote unquote, that Dr. King and other civil rights leaders used, it really does not capture everything that was going on. People were putting their bodies and their lives on the line because their right to exist was being threatened. Was being threatened. And so what you did this morning, Jeffrey, so you equated people literally putting their lives on the line for basic human rights, civil rights, health. You equated that to what Donald Trump is doing in terms of talking about withholding health care for millions of people, letting it collapse in an attempt to get his way to serve his political leanings.
Do you think Dr. King, Jeffrey, would agree with taking health care away from 20 or so odd million people?
I think if Dr. King talked to some of the people I have who've lost family members to Obamacare, that he might agree with them.
You know.
See, and there you go. He's going to try to use a false narrative as far as some people losing their health care. People lose health care every day. You have to look at the overall situation. The overall situation is either A, 20 million people have benefited and are continuing to benefit from the Affordable Care Act versus what? And I'm just going to throw a number out there, and I don't have any basis for the number. 100,000 people or 200,000 people that possibly could have lost their health care through some fault of Obamacare or the Affordable Care Act. You can't not equate the two. The overall benefit that America has received from the Affordable Care Act far, far, far outweighs the detrimental effects of the act itself. And for Mr. Lord to bring up a few people who may have, and I don't even know if he's telling the truth, but giving him the benefit of the doubt, who may have lost their health care through some feature of the Affordable Care Act, it's just not going to wash.
But let me tell you something really quick. My father passed away a month ago Saturday. He had a stroke, and he received excellent care up until his last breath because we had coverage. There are millions of people across this country who depend on this life-saving coverage of the Affordable Care Act. My mother, she has cancer. She is a cancer survivor because of programs like the mammogram programs that exist at Planned Parenthood, where folks can go in and catch it in stage 1 and before it takes their lives. We are playing with people's lives here. And what happens? No, we are playing with people's lives here. And what happens when people like Donald Trump, when folks like you equate, try to minimize it, try to politicize it. It is horrible and it is wrong.
Minimizing anything.
Healthcare is damn important in this country. Republicans, Democrats, and independents, I think they all agree. No one is going to tell you Obamacare is perfect. Things need to be changed. But we have to build on the success. People have to be willing to come to the table. But we cannot play with people's lives here. And that is exactly what's happening right here, right now on this program.
Absolutely not. I mean, you're making this all up from, there's example after example. This is a strategy.
Did you take in mind, when you made those comments, Jeffrey, did you take in mind that there are people out there that Simone, who feel like Simone, who are living with this every day, people who would be insulted by a comparison, quite frankly, to someone who said he had, at will, can grab people by the genitals or women, to make that comparison
I didn't do that, Don.
You did, Jeffrey. I mean, we're all listening. We all have ears. And listen, you're a nice enough man, but I don't think you understand the comparison that you were making.
Or the strategy, Don. I compared the strategy. President Kennedy.
Was it necessary? Was it necessary to make that comparison? Because you can compare a lot of people, just like Sean Spicer did when he compared, when he made the Hitler comparison. But was it necessary, Jeffrey? Do you understand? Was it necessary? You think it was?
All right, see, and that's the point. Now, this guy, Jeffrey Lord, is sticking to his guns. when you make a comparison to a person, okay, Mr. Lord may be trying to concentrate on one pinprick of Dr. Martin Luther King as far as strategy in his life. But when you make a comparison, you are comparing the person in totality. So what he did was he compared Martin Luther King in totality to Donald Trump, and he's just not getting it, okay? He's focusing in on two narrow points versus focusing in on the overall personages of Dr. Martin Luther King and Donald Trump. And honestly, there is no comparison, but he just doesn't get it. And you're going to see, further into this video, how much he doesn't get it. And he's also going to make a statement regarding the fact that he doesn't see color. And that, in my opinion, folks, is a flat-out lie.
Necessary. You could have made your point by doing something else.
It's a tactic. It's a tactic. It's a colorblind tactic. Strategy.
So we don't live in a colorblind society, but go on. Go ahead.
If I may, because this conversation is...
That's what I'm working for every day.
This conversation is amazing, and my heart goes out to Simone and her family, and my prayers are with them every single day, just like they are with most Americans who are going through trials and tribulations that many people can't imagine. But the fact is, as I quoted earlier, I have to quote again, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, of all forms of inequality, injustice, and health, is the most shocking and inhumane. So I think that but you can't just talk about Dr. King and whitewash him and eliminate the context. And that is what we're talking to you about, Jeffrey. You can't say it's the same tactic, but one was talking about taking away health care and one was talking about making sure that black citizens had equality under the law. You can't look at this in a vacuum. And even more importantly, I mean, I think that the level of political discourse that we have, and whether or not it comes from you or whether or not it comes from Sean Spicer or the President of the United States, is extremely low in this country right now. And that is the trouble that many people have. Many people are aghast by the fact that you can make a comparison between Donald Trump and Martin Luther King Jr., something that's unfounded. Or
how many times you set up the straw man? I did not do that.
Okay, Jeffrey, let me ask you something. You have 3 people you work with, right? You work with Bakari, you work with me, you work with Simone. 3 people of color.
And Selena.
No, let me get the point out. Let me get the point out. We are telling you that comparison was insulting, and you're ignoring it. Don't you think you should take that into consideration, whether or not you're trying to make a point or not, even if it's to the point that if I offended you, I'm sorry.
Don, when I lived as a teenager in the South, and my dad lost his job standing up for a black waitress.
You're not answering my question now. You're not answering my question in the moment. Don't take me back to some before the war crap. I want to hear what you're saying to the coworkers you work with now, Jeffrey. Answer the question now. I don't want to hear about stuff from 50 damn years ago. I want to hear now to the coworkers, to the people of color you work with on this network every single day who are offended by your remark. You're not listening to us.
Don, come on. This isn't right. This is not moral. We don't judge people by color in this country. That is racist. It's wrong.
See, and that's the whole point. This guy is not listening, okay? He's locked into his position. He just got told that 3 people did not take his statement the way that potentially he meant it to be, okay? And that's the thing about communication. It's not just what you say, it's what people hear. And what he said wasn't what everybody heard. And then when he just made a statement about not judging people based on color, people are judged based on color every single day. Now, you may discount dealing with a person that's a different color, and a lot of us do, okay? But there's that little nagging thing. When you first interact with a person, you are noticing their color. It's just the way that we're built. It's in our DNA. Now, whether you have conditioned yourself not to react to it one way or another, that's a whole different story. But we see colors all around us. We see the sky is blue. We see the color of the clothes that we wear. We see the color of the people that we interact with. That's just it in a nutshell. So whether this guy wants to admit it or not, And I'm telling you, he's just straight out lying when he says he doesn't see color. But anyway, let's keep going.
Let me tell you something.
We don't judge people.
Let me tell you something. Every single day I walk out of my house, I am a black woman, Jeffrey. I don't have the luxury of saying I don't see color. Every single day I walk out of my house, someone sees me as a black woman, regardless of how I see myself. I'm a black woman. Don is a black man. Bakari is a black man. You have the luxury of walking out of the house and just being in America.
You don't have to think about it.
You do not have to think about it. And that, my friend, is a position of privilege.
But
and when you have the opportunity to be on the other side, to listen, to have a dialogue, you should take it.
So Simone and Jeffrey, I think this is the conversation this is the gap in America that we have today. Because there's so many people who have these racial blind spots. Jeffrey it genuinely does not believe that anything he said this morning was incorrect, disingenuous, wrong, or harmful. That is a problem, and if you can't have that empathy for someone who just literally told you that their father died, or I told you my father was shot, or Don is, we have two black personalities on late night TV, and one of them is telling you he's offended by it, sitting here before you. If you can't understand that empathy, then
I gotta take a break. We'll be back.
All right, now this last segment gets a little bit inflammatory, and to the point that Don basically just cuts it off and kills it. But check this piece out.
Selena, you haven't had a chance to speak. What do you think of this conversation?
Well, as a child of the 60s who grew up with the civil rights movement that played out right in front of my front yard, from the kids I went to school with to the preacher who lived across the street from my family, who was very involved with the movement, I struggle very much to see the comparison between the tactics of the civil rights movement and the tactics of President Trump with the healthcare movement. With all due respect, Jeffrey, the civil rights movement, like great movements in this country that had results, women's suffrage, the civil rights, or the Civil War, the American Revolution, these were brought up through churches and through activism, and they were about making people's lives safer and better. And what Mr. Trump is doing on healthcare is a boardroom tactic. It's smart, it's politics, but I don't see the comparison at all.
Jeffrey, I'll give you the last word on this.
I see the comparison with everything you said. The American Revolution stopped the British government in its tracks. It upended things. Think the Boston Tea Party. So too the Civil War. So too did countless other movements. That was the point. That is the objective. The strategy is an old one. Dr. King used it. He wasn't the first. He's not going to be the last. He hasn't been the last. People in the pro-life movement try and use this by shutting down abortion clinics. I mean, what the objective is to just so disrupt that you get the other side to negotiate to an agreement. That's the objective of the strategy, no matter who uses it.
You haven't listened to anything we said.
Don, you're talking liberal to me. That's what you're doing.
No, I'm talking real. This is real. I'm talking human. You're going to sit here on television and tell us that you don't notice the color. I notice the color of your hair. I notice when someone has red hair. I know you have white hair. I know Simone is wearing. I know Simone is wearing white. I know I'm wearing blue. It's insulting when you are stating something that is not in reality. And we're sitting here as people. You're not. Will you let me finish, Jeffrey? I'm talking to you. Will you let me finish? Okay. Dr. King means something different to the people who are sitting here than he meant to you. He wasn't just a tactic for us. He's a real person who helped me to be able to get here, and Simone to be able to sit here, and for Bakari to be able to sit here, and Selena, and for you to come on and give some reckless comparison to his work and his legacy.
It is Dr. King's views.
Good night.
You should not be judged by the color of your skin.
Good night.
See, and that's the whole point. Should not be, but still are. And Mr. Lord, he just absolutely doesn't get it. He's confusing or conflating tactics versus goals, okay? Dr. Martin Luther King's goal was to get the country to a point of equality. The tactic that he used was a civil disobedience, etc. Mr. Trump's goal is to take healthcare away from approximately 20 million people, and the tactic that he is using is more than likely going to try to take away the revenue flows from the subsidies for the Affordable Care Act. That is attacked through equality of all people. The goal in Mr. Trump's case is to get rid of health care for approximately 20 million people. End of story. Jeffrey Lord, all I can do is shake my head. Like I said, I don't know if you are a racist, but I do know that you are, at a minimum, racially insensitive, especially when you have people of color tell you that they took offense to the comments that you made, yet you still want to stick to your guns and cannot see the situation from their point of view. Empathy is not there for you, my friend.